what is the love of wisdom? And maybe we can unpack that proposition and look at all of its different components. So first of all, let me ask a question: what is love? Because that's one component. And more specifically, what is love in the philosophical sense of the word? And do we? There are different definitions of love according to the philosophers and according to the Greeks. And so maybe we can briefly touch upon those and then see which of those might be most relevant, the understanding of philosophy in our sense of the word. So the ancient Greeks talked about, for example, basically three kinds of love, at least three kinds of love. So there was Eros, and Eros was sort of well, first of all, the term Eros itself comes from Greek mythology, comes from Hesiod, and Eros was the god of love in Hesiod's mythological universe. And then as the meanings of words evolved, Eros took on the connotation of sexual love. And we see that in the writings of Plato, for instance, in his Symposium in particular. And he talks about how sexual love, in some sense, can transform itself into a love of the ideal form of love. So to put this differently, for Plato, we start off, say, with sexual love, say sexual love toward a beautiful woman or a beautiful person, or so on and so forth. And then that love, part of that love participates in the love of the ideal. So the ideal here is beauty. So the beautiful person participates in the ideal beauty. And so by maybe loving a particular person, we can then develop a greater appreciation for, the love of the form of the beautiful. And so that might be relevant to our definition of philosophy. There's also Philia, which is another Greek term for love, and it has a somewhat different meaning. And the meaning of Philia is more akin to the love we have of a friend, the love we have for a loved one. It's also the attitude that we bear to our beloved. And the attitude, roughly, in Aristotelian terms at least, we love someone or something because it's useful, because it's pleasurable, or because we admire that thing. And so in that sense, I think that also applies to our definition of philosophy, because we love wisdom because we find it useful, because we find it pleasurable, because we find that the pursuit of wisdom is in some sense admirable in an ethical sense. And in the particular sense, we generally love people who embody philosophy. So, in the particular, we love particular philosophers. We love Socrates because he was wise. We love Socrates. So in that sense, we love Socrates because he was admirable, because he was virtuous. We also love Socrates for what he said. What he said was very useful. The knowledge that he imparts, allows us to develop a knowledge of how we should, better live our lives. And Socrates was also, a pleasing guy to be around. Apparently, he was kind of the life of the party. Apparently, he could drink everybody under the table, and so he was an interesting guy to have a conversation with. And so, in that sense of the word, I think we could make sense of love of wisdom from that standpoint as well. So So that's one way of thinking about it. And then lastly, there's agape. And agape is also a Greek term. And agape basically just means, unconditional love. So, it's the love that a parent has for their kid, for example. So that's love. That's the love side of it.
Yeah, I think when I think of philia, I think of sort of the love that a child has for his grandfather. His grandfather, the grandfather kind of embodies sort of wisdom in the family. They're the one that you sort of have a bit of reverence, sort of the most respect for in the family, especially as a young man. As someone that you look up to, and someone that you almost listen to without question. You listen. Wisdom. The wisdom of the grandfather is the sort of the pinnacle of family knowledge, and I think that's a good way of viewing philia, is that sort of love. It's not a romantic love. Um, Maybe it's a bit of sort of this unconditional agape, sort of the love that a parent would have for a child. But I think really philia captures that relationship between us and our appreciation for wisdom.